Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian, and today we are going to be looking at pretty map screenshots and at really interesting dev responses. They basically updated the Steam page and added a bunch of new screenshots that we can see right here. Very excited to talk about those because there is a lot in them. And most importantly, they are very pretty. We have a full map now, fully, there's a lot to see here, basically. So, let's do this. There will be chapters. If you're not interested in the images, which I frankly couldn't understand, then just make sure to go check out the chapters, because then you will be able to jump to the dev responses for the dev diary about the cost of war. So, what can we see here? We have a bunch more, Native American nations right here. They appear to every single one appears to be, unrecognized. No, actually decentralized even, not just unrecognized. You can tell the difference is basically that they're not colored in. This one is unrecognized, but you can play it. This one is unrecognized and decentralized, meaning you can't play it. None of these are playable. I think that is fair. What I mean by that is, of course, that they should be playable, but as long as they don't have proper mechanics, frankly, I think it is better to not have them than to have them and do them poorly. What else can we see here? Honestly, Grau Para, I believe this is a revolt. Look at Piratini, I absolutely love it. Patagonia. Argentina, of course, is what would be taking over Patagonia and so on. Then we have the Cape Colony right over there. Madagascar is playable. We have a bunch of playable nations right here. Then we have a bunch of playable nations right here. They added more playable nations compared to the initial Africa screenshots that we had. You can already see that Long Saxony is gone. Long Saxony is gone. They got rid of it. I really enjoy what this map looks like. You can see it here as well. Map of the world, 1836 to 1936 in Vino Veritas. In wine there is truth. You got these beautiful islands right here. I think the trade nodes, or rather the sea nodes that we have, are very sensible. You can see the connection right there. You can see the Bering Strait under control, if you have this one right there. I think this is a very pretty map. But on top of that, also a map that sort of really fulfills its purposes. It's very easy to tell who's friend and foe. You can see the same color for the, vassals, like Tibet, for example, or the Indian principalities. You can also see, of course, which actual sea nodes you're using, which is very important because, again, sea nodes effectively have the same mechanic as EU4 sea zone missions and Hoi 4 sea zone missions, except they are just more visible. They're more condensed. It is easier to tell what is where, right? Yeah, overall, you can also see, this is one of the new things. They talked about this on the Discord. This is green Shogunate Japan. If you reform it, I believe they become red, the classic red Japan color. And yeah, it's green currently. You can also see, of course, it loops around. Whoop, we got Japan twice. This is the ideal world with infinite Japan. What else is there? You have the table, of course, but we've seen this in the past. What is really nice, in my opinion, this looks nice now. What is this? Like a machine measurement, how strong it is? Maybe like a boat speed thing, right? That sort of stuff. Either way, I really like what they have done visually to the UI in general. I like the flag, of course. We can see their points right here, their literacy rate. I think this is the standard of living, how much the population. No radicals, no enemies. This is, of course, Sweden. Just to bring that up, this is Sweden when they had Norway in the personal union. And then comes something that we will see here quite a bit, and that I can't explain because I don't really know. Active journal entries. Let me scroll down a bit. There you go. The atmospheric engine. This sounds like science, right? Maybe, who knows what this is? Who knows how tech works? That's for next week's dev diary. Establish a university. This sounds very much like a mission. Could it be a mission given to you by interest groups? Could it be something given to you by your parliament, by your government maybe in particular? I am really curious about this, because establish a university is basically like a decision, like you would have it in Victoria 2, like you would have it in so many other games, but it's sort of driven. We already know these type of missions, of course, from, for example, EU4, right? But this appears to be how they try to do dynamic content delivery. They talked about that exact phrasing a while ago, and I said to myself, dynamic content delivery. What exactly do they mean? And I think this might be one of those. Whether this is a decision, whether this is a mission, whether this is a mix between a decision and an event chain, whatever it is, I'm very interested in it, and I would like to see this as a dynamic content delivery. If I don't have the intelligentsia, for example, in my government, may I never get this mission, and may it be, if I instead have the armed forces in there, may it be like build up 2 barracks, that sort of stuff. That will change your country, because it will change how strong certain groups are, it will change where certain pops work, what they earn, and so on. This could be part of this dynamic content delivery system. Then we have urbanized Sweden. Seems like a more established university, but it has the same image as the atmospheric engine. So these are tech related. Oh, sorry. These are machinery tech related. and this is clearly arts, right? So social tech. And then here we have a legendary newspaper, patronize romanticism. Oh, I'm not sure. I have no evidence that this could be the way it is. But do you remember EU4 institutions? They spread, right? We know there's tech exposure and tech spread. That has been revealed in the Everything We Know So Far post made by Liana. Patronize romanticism. Could this be you inviting the institution over? Where you're like, I want to become the home of romanticism, I'm going to pay for these people. Could this be it? I don't know what these journal entries actually are, but this is super fascinating to me. Again, we're going to see more as we go through the screenshots. Right here, you're going to see it even closer. You can see right here, Saxony has been cut. The Thuringian principalities are here. I believe, yeah, Sigmaringen also, right down there. You know, the rest looking pretty good. Shouldn't Eupen Malmedy, shouldn't that be Prussian? Either way, listen, map, work in progress, but Germany looks much, much, much better, quite frankly. The Saxony is finally gone. Let's take a look at the Prussian relationships. There's a bunch of radicals right here. There's a 13.7 million population. That's quite nice. We got a bunch of GDP and, you know, money in the bank, basically. We are currently showing the attitude map. So that is how the AI feels about us, whereas relation, just to make that clear, is what our actual relation is. The attitude basically shows where the AI wants to be with us in our relation. Austria doesn't like us. Belgium doesn't like us. Yeah, Russia and Great Britain like us. France likes us. We're a great country. Everybody loves us. Yeah, I mean, Bavaria likes us. Or actually, no, this is attitude. Yeah, no, they like us. Now, let's take a look at this. We are improving relationships with Russia. Our puppet is... This is Sigmaringen, right? I think so. Our alliance is with, I believe, Saxony. And we have a customs union. This is the Zollverein. Yep, everybody in there. Is this... Is Bavaria... This is Bavaria? Is this Krakow? Krakow isn't in our union, right? In the Zollverein? No, diplomatic play in Poland. You can actually see it. Who the hell are you? This is clearly Bavaria. Man, look at... Okay, this is the Bavarian flag, right? This is the Krakowian flag. If you didn't know that Bavaria was the greatest power of all, which is why they get this beautiful silver, but I personally refer to it as platinum frame, then you couldn't tell, right? Look at that. We're doing a diplomatic play in Poland against Russia. Oh, actually against Hungary, right. Russia is not decided yet, which is why we're improving relations. And Hungary says, nah, I'm defending Krakow. I like that a lot. Oh, I love diplomatic plays already. Let's take a look. Central Archives and patronize romanticism. Interesting. This is at the start of the game as well, patronize romanticism. I assume this is how you gain the social tech benefits of romanticism, maybe? Either way. What else do we have? Rivalry with Austria. Yeah, so basically, right away, the player sat down here and was like, what if I... Hear me out here. What if I antagonize Austria immediately? This is how you maybe form Germany very, very quickly. I like this. I like the revised Germany map. I really like the way the game is looking here. You can see the diplomatic lens as well. Let's take a look at this. Nothing new here. Nope, nothing new at all. Customs union broken. Who did it? Hey, who did this? This is a dead bird. This is a dead bird. So I assume... Ooh, oh, look at that. A diplomatic offer from... This looks so good. That looks so good. A diplomatic offer from Russia. I assume maybe it's an alliance. Maybe it's just participation. Look at this. It looks very similar to the diplomatic action symbol, right? I think this is an alliance. I think Russia is going to ally us. And we're going to go to war with them against Austria and show them what our left, looks like. Our left swing. I like that. I really think... obviously, it's a bit early in 1836 to already be doing this, but... God, I want to play this game so bad. It looks so good. And yeah, actually looking at this, I assume that maybe Lübeck or Hamburg broke the customs union. I think this is Lübeck? Is Hamburg in here? I don't think they are. I don't see the Hamburg symbol. I think they may have broken the customs union. Either way, cool stuff. I love the look of the diplomatic notification. Huge fan of this. Now, here we are at the Mexican budget. We get a better look at the Native Americans, Iron Confederacy, Nijisitapi, Abasaroka, Great Sioux Nation, Pawnee, Arapaho, Ute, Navajo, Apache, Comanche. I like it. I like the stuff that we have going on here in general. Again, playing them would be dope as hell. Actually like having... This is definitely like something where they focus on this region, right? Because you can make all the undecentralized... all decentralized nations, there we go, playable, but the Native American nations should have a very different set of tools that they can utilize to make it out of being unrecognized and decentralized than the nations, for example, in Africa needed, right? If they work together here, for example, in a Great Confederation, that could be spooky. I would love it. If Mexico supplies them to go against the US, I would love that. Now let's take a look at our budget. We have no income tax. Yeah, no income tax. Okay, so this is just a law, and then the actual setting is done here, right? It would be lower than medium, but we don't have any to begin with. Then we have some poll taxes. Okay, we're levying those. It's quite a sizable chunk, actually, of our total income. We have a consumption tax on grain. Oh, if you want to eat, you better pay a tax, buddy. That is basically, I would argue, a tax on the poor in its majority. Then the dividends taxes, minting, that is just generally what happens. Money from the investment fund. Ooh, the capitalists are, maybe the aristocrats are paying us quite well. Diplomatic pacts, so somebody is actually paying us for existing. I like it. And then our national expenses, let's check this out. Government wages, the construction is quite sizable, actually. Goods for government buildings. Okay, yeah, military wages. I like that you can look at the taxes alone and be like, your social structure is clearly going against the poor. You're taxing food. You could tax something that is a luxury good, you know, would get less money from the investment fund, but you could do it, but you don't. Because you know, the poor are where, you know, our money is at. That also leads us to 343k radicals. Oh, Mexico, you better get it together. Over here, patronage romanticism, we've seen that quite a bit, right? We're damaging relationships with a country that I do not recognize, and we are currently reforming our government, at least I believe that is what it means, from an oligarchy to an autocracy. Wow. There's a reform government tab in a future screenshot that we are going to see here that we haven't seen anywhere else, I think. And I think this is what that is. I think oligarchy to autocracy is what that is. Mexico did, of course, and I don't know the history of Mexico well enough, but I believe in this time frame they did become an empire shortly, right? And France invaded them, because France was like, why not? Something like that. Wasn't it Napoleon III that did it? Either way, oligarchy to autocracy, success or advance. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves me being autocratic. That's the way it is. Right here we can see what is currently being constructed. Yep. With, I can't tell which method is being used, or whether these even are methods. I think they are, but I can't answer that. But you can see we're building sugar plantations, an administrative building. This is something metal, I can't remember. A lumberyard, chemical industry, and then cotton. That's what we're building. That is a hefty build-up on an industrial level for Mexico. They want to become the United States of this timeline. You can tell. I think you can tell. What I do want to point out, by the way, and let's go back for this. You can see it right here. This very much, in many, many ways, is the CK3 UI, and I'm incredibly happy for it. The CK3 UI is beautiful, beautiful to get the information that you need, and to make it so that especially players that are not comfortable with the game can get eased into it. No longer will you have to watch videos that are like 2 hours long for this, you know, to actually learn anything. You can sit down and you can trust, for example, your tab, your advice tab. You get the notifications down here of important stuff like the customs union being broken. You can't quite see it, but that's okay. And then right here you have the ledger, the rider, of course. You know, I like this. This is a good setup. Here we have Japan. I believe Shogunate Japan. What are we looking at here? We have buildings. These are the urban buildings that we have. Textile mills, furniture manufacturers, glassworks, tooling workshops, paper mills, shipyards, arms industries. Here is where you would be changing your production methods of these locations. You can either change them wholesale, or you can do it, you know, just where you are. This might be, is this a subsidy button? To subsidy an entire industry? It might be. This looks like, ooh, oh yeah. This is, you see the circle here? This circle indicates that we are going. Isn't that interesting that we are, isn't this our rank? How are we ranked 17? In 1836. Are we no longer unrecognized? Either way, it doesn't matter, okay? It's for, oh my god. The player here did something. 2.3 million. Very unhappy. Very unhappy. Preserve dedicated police force. There's not much radicalism in here. Where does the radicalism come from? Did they like end the shogunate within like half a year in the game? People are very unhappy. These stories that this can tell. Either way, what is very important here, again, you can either change this wholesale or you can do it per the building, which will also be very relevant when you change the barracks production methods, because the barrack production methods determine what sort of squads you are creating, and you want to create squads that are good for certain generals. So this is a very important interface. This is Mount Fuji, right? Takasaki, Niigata, Shizuoka. Look at that. What are we building here? This is a naval base, or is this a shipyard? Man, I gotta tell you, by the way. Is this like after a storm? Are these like devastated trees? I love the road texture. They talked about this in the Discord. I mean, this doesn't look too nice, but that just happens. Sometimes it does that, right? But they talked about this. They have like a new algorithm to do the road texture here. Good stuff. It looks so good. This map is beautiful. Just gorgeous. We got a wagon right there. Currently, we're passing a local police force instead of dedicated police force. I believe that means we might be decentralizing. They want to preserve dedicated police force. Of course, honestly, I prefer it. I gotta tell you. We're building a lot. Yeah, we're building a lot. Man, there's a lot of building being done. And I think this is also a big part of why warfare is the way it is. I mean, I personally, again, I welcome warfare because it's now an integrated story tool that actually connects very, very well to everything else. But look at what they're building. Half a year in. This is very, very delicate. There's a lot going on here. And that means during war, there will be even more going on here. You need time to manage this. That's the way it is. And I like that. I like that because that's the main focus. Society building is the focus of Victoria 3, no doubt. Right. Here we have an Ottoman screen and they're not having a good time. Having a very bad time. Okay, let's take a look at this. I think we should start up here. A revolution is currently kicking off. 2.6 million are unhappy, but we have 360k loyalists. That's okay. Literacy is really, really low. Our Sultan is Mahmud Osmanoglu, and he's, I believe, ambitious, probably like cruel or like, demanding, something like this. He is a public speaker, I believe, an orator, maybe charismatic, and he's part of the landed gentry. He also endorses slavery, I think. Local governors, okay, so this is our government, local governors. So that's our flavor of landed gentry. Armed forces and petite bourgeoisie. Those are all supporting us. The armed forces, however, are unhappy. They have become unhappy with us. And you can see that the local governors are actually losing clout and have been losing clout since we unposed in January 1836. That partially landed, I believe these are the armed forces. Partially there, and then partially, I believe, in the intelligentsia and whatever the green ones are, the Sunni madrasas. Yeah, there they are. But they are loyal. The Sunni madrasas. No, actually, that's the rural folk. Right, so the Sunni madrasas are loyal. And then we have the rural folk and the intelligentsia very unhappy. So I assume that this revolution, yep, this revolution, there you can see it. We have an angry intelligentsia, and they are starting a civil war. And despite only having 6.2% of the clout in this country, they can turn 8 regiments, or well, battalions, 10 to 20 of our ships, well, our naval power, and 7 to 8 of our states. That's a lot. Like, this can be very dangerous. And the interesting thing here, I do want to bring that up as well. Man, there's so much here that we need dev diaries on, okay? The interesting thing here is that this means civil wars, right? And then this in particular is a revolution. What other civil wars could we have? To change a law back, for example, right? To not necessarily change the government, but to change a law, maybe to change a stance on a particular topic, you know, like your economic system, for example. It's not necessarily a revolution. Oh, I would be eager to see what they have here. But, so the way I see it is, this is basically the timer, right? Until they rebel, it is at least what I think this is. And they're taking 7 to 8 states with them. I assume the Ottomans have like 20, 25, maybe 30. I wonder how it's calculated, but this is a threat. This will mean a lot of sacrifice that has to be brought to bring this to an end. So you would rather have the intelligentsia shut up about it. What else do we have? Active interest groups. These are negative. This is the intelligentsia, I guess, denying us, for example, you know, creative work. These are the armed forces, apparently burning trade goods, maybe. Then we have the benefits. This looks like a well-oiled machine, maybe tech, maybe it's an industry. Right here we have schools, and then right here we have, I assume, childbirth. You know, have as many children as you can is, of course, a principle there. The government legitimacy. This could be calculated via the clout and the government legitimacy, and then via the radicals. If you put all that together, it may be how you calculate this. Who knows? I'm eager to find out. Let's take a look at this. We are currently reforming the law, and I assume that makes the intelligentsia very, very angry. From cultural exclusion to national supremacy. I assume we're becoming more radical towards saying, okay, you're a minority and we don't support you, but now we're going, you're either becoming like us or you're out, right? That is the way I see it. You can see that is also why the intelligentsia is trying to rise up. They want to end this. They want to preserve at least cultural exclusion. They don't want to go any further, and the radicalism is insanely high. Yeah. This is how this is formed. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this springs out of this, right? This is a really good example of a screenshot that tells a story about ruining your country simply by virtue of passing a law and not having the right majority. Because these debates will let this political movement be radicalized further, will strengthen this revolution, and will dunk on you. I love it. Now, over here, we can actually also see this. This has to be like starvation, right? Something starvation? I believe this is, yet again, what's it always called? Patronized romanticism? Yeah, this is patronized romanticism. The rest, I'm not sure. Something dynamite, and there's a bar here. Are you seeing this? There's an actual bar here. I wish we could see this active journal entry list, but okay, no chance right now. Let's continue. Persian Shiite aristocrats pop in livestock ranches in Iraq Kazemi. We are in Persia here in Iran. This is Tehran. This is Kaim Shah, Kalus. The opium trade. Oh, now that's an interesting journal entry, isn't it? The opium trade. This looks like it is a situation, right? It might be a situation related to a country, related to another country that you're involved in, something like this. I'm not certain, but I will tell you. Very interested in finding out more. Let's take a look at the pops. How are you doing? First of all, I like the way you look. I like the way you look. Yeah. I hope the idle animation looks good. That is very important. The idle animation plays a huge role in CK3. There was this huge discrepancy between CK3's pre-release sort of character screenshots and then actually seeing it in action. It's so much better with the idle animation. So yeah, I want to see this in full color. They're wealthy. The 46. They are amazingly well off. They have a workforce of only 100, so that is about 1/5 of the total population, and 403 dependents, but they are living good. Of course, in this society, most likely men would do most of the regular work, women do maybe some odd jobs, but mostly homework, and then you have children, making it so that there's such a huge discrepancy between the workforce and the actual population amount. They have a good literacy, could be better, of course, they are aristocrats. Interest group. They are landed gentry, or whatever the equivalent in Iran would be. Political strength is 28.1k for 500 pops. That is insane. They have 100 radicals, though. Oh, God. What are we doing that you hate us so much, I wonder? Opium plantations in Luristan. Oh, that's where the opium trade comes from, huh? Look at that. What else is going on? We're not doing well on money. Our money reserves, our gold reserves are going into the negative, making it so that people may soon actually go against us heavily. They're already quite heavily going against us. Man, every screenshot here is like the population hates you. I think that is the theme of this game, huh? Population is just like, I hate ya. Stop doing this. What else can we see? Nothing too interesting, I don't think. Right here, this is England. It's the north of England. We see Middlesbrough, we see Newcastle. Somewhere there's Sunderland as well. Poor old Sunderland. Blackburn, Manchester, of course, with Salford, the core of the north, up there. Sheffield. Let's take a look at what else. Let's take a look at this here first. The Hannoveranische, okay? Succession. Situation. It sounds like a situation, right? It sounds like a mix between quests, situations, and texts. How those actually work, I have no idea. I'm so eager about this system. Path to liberalism. Provide rail transportation for industries. This sounds like a mission. This one doesn't sound like a mission. This could just be a situation, right? But what is a situation? What does it do? I don't know. I'm very eager to find out, though. The whaling industry, patronized romanticism, everybody loves it. Western Frontier Expedition. This is cool because this clearly is an expanded system for expeditions, finding the source of the Nile, etc., etc. You actually have a storyline, a story quest. I like it. Oh, God. Okay. So that is all nice, and then we have this diplomatic. First of all, as the UK player, you're busy. Okay, you're a busy fella. You're doing a lot of stuff. Diplomatic play in Indochina. You and all of your colonies versus France, and I believe Daviet. Could be Daviet, could be a different Indochinese country. And then undecided, I believe this is Canada. Whoever you are, the Great Qing, of course. Oh, this is Daviet actually. Sorry, my bad. Could this be Cambodia or something? Not sure. These are the Khmer, right? I am so bad with these flags, but you know what I'm talking about. This is a big play, and you can take France, I'm sure, but what about these fellas? What about if any of these, if the Great Qing are convinced to join France? Ooh, this might not be worth it. You might want to back down. Now, English Protestant machinists Pop in steel mills in Yorkshire. Yeah, look at him. Look at him go. They look Irish to me. Right, with the hair and stuff. They're English though. Hey, that's fair. Population, 26.6k. Workforce, 8k. Dependents, 18.6k. This is a much smaller ratio compared to the aristocrats. From steel mills, they're making a lot of money. From art shops, not that much. State, Yorkshire. English, Protestant. Literacy, 60.6. Radicals, loyalists. Nope, they're all fine. Don't really care about it. I think they're mostly disenfranchised. Here you would, I believe, see like all of the interest groups, how they split. I believe they are just members of multiple interest groups. Net income, minus 94.9. So they are currently losing standard of living. Were the other ones losing standard of living? No, they're gaining it, and yet they're unhappy. Sons of guns. Industrialist, engines of progress deactivated. So this would be their modification. You can't quite see it, but don't worry about it. This is their modification for... no, I can't show it to you. That they get if they're happy with you. Anything else here? Let's take a look. No, not that I can see it. Oh, a lot of... Everybody hates living in this game. Everybody's like, I want to rebel. Yeah, hell yeah. Alright, okay. These are great screenshots. This map looks really nice. I wish we had a bridge here. I gotta tell you, I wish we had a bridge here, but like, this map looks really, really nice. What they have done with the map since what they showed off initially is incredible. And that is why I'm not worried about like the visuals of the characters, for example. Obviously, like, I'm fine with these as we have them here, but I expect them to get even better. Just look at the map. Look at what CK3 did when announced and then afterwards. This is... They got this. I have full trust in them. Now we have Sokoto. We are Sokoto. We can see where the industrialists are heavily localized. I like this. This is very important to see where they actually have their loyalists, right? And the industrialists are an interest group that exists, of course. They don't really like us. It's a -4. They're almost unhappy with us. They have a very, very small cloud, like a tiny cloud. And they hate us. I assume Sokoto starts as a monarchy, right? Why wouldn't it? And also, by the way, great map. So this map... God, I wish CK3 looked like this on this zoom level. If you take away... In CK3, everything is colored on the zoom level. If you take that away, it doesn't look that good. Victoria 3 doesn't. Victoria 3 looks pretty nice. Now, the industrialists, what are they doing? They are Republicans. They're Republican because of Bugaya Agalawa. He is a Republican and he is bringing that trait in. He is also bigoted and a political operator. They're currently a marginalized interest groups, of course, you know, because nobody really cares for them. They're plutocratic, laissez-faire, and individualist. They are what you want if you want to lead Koto to being a major nation. You need to push these folks forward because they will provide you with the funds that you need to make Sokoto into an industrialized nation. Currently, nobody cares for them because we're basically a post-feudal society, or maybe even still a feudal society, right? Which is a very, like, lax term. It doesn't really mean much, but I hope you know where I'm coming from. Sokoto is needs a long way to getting anywhere, and honestly, the coast is one of the big ways to getting there. So, yeah, either force them into a customs union or, hey, take them. Yeah, no, lovely. You're improving relationships, you're building some stuff that's nice. Landowners, family ties deactivated, they're no longer that happy with us. And France is improving relations. Thank you, France, I appreciate that. Please don't conquer me. And this brings us to the last screenshot here. Holy moly, I'm 30 minutes in. This is Siam. Siam is doing pretty hot, I think. You know, Siam standing right here. In the dev diary from today, they were getting conquered. Not the case here. They're doing well. They're also dealing with the opium trade. They're changing a law. No migration controls to migration controls. Okay. That's gonna stall for a long time. Yep, people don't... Yep, no, they want to debate it. They need to debate it. And not that many people are unhappy, though. They're actually in a good spot, Siam, it seems. They're an isolationist empire. That's the government. They are landed gentry and church-led. And then there's also, of course, the rural folk. That's what they're called. We are primary cultures Thai, Theravada, struggling, population 3.96 million, literacy 7.2. Yeah. Siam is doing well. I like what they... it just looks so nice these days. Yeah, this all looks just so nice. They are cordial with Luang Prabang, I think? And I don't know who these are. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know. But what I can tell you is... beautiful map. Siam is trying to reform, you know, some of its laws, and it's struggling with it. And I'm excited to struggle with it in Victoria 3 myself. Now, we are now coming to the dev responses for Victoria 3's last dev diary, which was the cost of war. Hope you're interested in that as well. Alright, so here we are with the dev responses. We're going to go through the stuff that I marked. We're gonna just, most of them, or many of them, I might just read out to you. I think they are sensible in their own right. Other times I might want to discuss it with you. One thing we have discussed is having subsidized buildings be exempt from conscription, as that is a good way of flagging industry as essential. So they are not doing that. They talked about this in this Discord as well. If you do this, that means that state-operated economies will conscript nobody because it is all subsidized, right? But they are looking into prioritization, basically, of conscription. I think that is also a great idea. Obviously, we're going to have this here as well in the dev responses. There is some calculation behind who gets conscripted and how they get conscripted, but right now the only prioritization that you have manually is basically you sitting down and saying, I want this state and that state and this state and that state. That works fine if you really want to prioritize something there, but you have to remember, and you should remember, that, of course, there's also actually a wealth component. There's also, like just a certain in which industry do you work, whether you earn well in that industry is completely irrelevant, right? That sort of stuff is important there, making it so that a bit more prioritization would be cool. But yeah, they're thinking about it. They got it in their mind. The number of conscripted battalions you can raise is determined by your conscription rate, which is predominantly at least based in your army, on your army model. We talked about this last week. This is a fraction of the workforce in your country that can be conscripted, which means that as you expand the rights of women, in the process you get access to more conscripts as well. They do not track anything related to sex, right, or gender, whatever. They're not tracking any of this because, as it stands, you can basically headcanon it, whether you have your women work or your women serve in the army, right? The lower the percentage of dependents is, so people that don't work fully, you can headcanon that. Is it children? Is it women? Is it maybe men? Hey, I don't know. Why not, right? That is something that isn't emulated because it doesn't need to be. The role of dependents and how many are fully working and not already covers this topic entirely. Giving women the right to work, for example, in the game will make it so that women will just, or rather, there will just be fewer dependents. And that is exactly what is happening there. So basically, yeah, they're not making a difference there. This may be because you permit women to do military service, as Lacek says right here, or because women in the workplace permits more men to go off to war. Whether you want to do one or the other or both at the same time in a limited fashion, completely up to you and what is in your head, right? Let's move on. We're currently collecting statistics on the military casualties associated with specific wars. We saw that in the dev diary this week, where that plays a role in the war support. We're not currently keeping track of civilian casualties due to devastation, maybe in the future. That would be cool. So it would be cool to have that tracked, just because I want it tracked. You could also integrate this into war support, but I do want to mention, if you are a pop and you are actively dying because of devastation, you have to migrate away, your standard of living is suffering. You're looking at a situation where you are being unhappy and being creating turmoil, right? Where that will already be integrated within your war support calculation. So this is already represented, but I do think they should still track it. Every military building can have as unique of a setup as you like, so you could create differently equipped battalions in every barracks in 4 different states and differently equipped conscripts in each state for that matter. Battalions from the same military building will be split up between as few generals as possible, in most cases only one, so you can decide exactly what equipment the troops that belong to a certain general should be using. So this is about the topic of specialization. What will not be the case, and this is very, very sensible because it just does not make any sense. I know we can do it in all the other games, but you can't have an army of artillery only. I know, devastating, truly, but that's not how it ever was. We're having a more normalized experience, basically, right? A more realistic experience. And you can have a barrack and say, you as a barrack have the production method of, for example, post-Napoleonic tactics or trench warfare, and then you have certain weaponry that support trench warfare, and that goes in there. That is how you do it. When you look at a general, they already showed this as well, you will be seeing where the troops that are in the general's army are coming from, so what barracks, and those barracks you can then change the production method in and basically prioritize whatever the general is good with fighting with. As they are buildings, so this is barracks, they follow the same principles, meaning you can customize each one individually or switch what production methods are in use all across your country at once if you like. You can also adjust production methods for groups of battalions on the general they assign to. There you go. Each battalion of 1,000 take damage individually. So if you get into a fight with 4 battalions, they all take damage individually. So you could have one battalion with 823 men, another with 618, another with 936, of which 133 are demoralized, etc., etc. They will receive reinforcements automatically and gradually based on the activities of the building that supports them. Good stuff. I like that. It's not, you know, hey, you lose a battle, everybody is left at 950. Everybody is left at 800. This is a good situation. Since we don't actually distinguish, right, we already covered this as well. Tariffs are applied to both imports and exports. Most of the time, you would indeed use them on imports, for example, goods being exported to you. This is one of the rare use cases where you might want to discourage other countries from exporting your weapons. This was on the topic of you being at war and needing your weapons for your own industry, right? So you could say if somebody else is exporting your stuff to them, you could say, I'm going to put tariffs on that. If you are exporting it to somebody else, you can just cancel your route, right? So that is how you can do it on the other end. Note that you can choose which exact goods to tariff. It's not across the board for all imports and exports. This is just so good. This is just so good. Not just having the stupid tariff slider is so good. Having a consumption tax like we saw earlier where you can say grain gets taxed. The poor eating, you don't need to do that. Hey, that's luxury. Guns, you could tax those. It's just seriously, this system is infinitely better than any other goods-focused production system that we've seen. EO4's system, come on, it's laughable. Victoria 2's is laughable in comparison as well. This one is outstanding. Let's continue. Piracy is not a thing. Wrong error for that to be a major aspect of the game. That is true. I do want to point that out. But, and I'm going to be very happy. I'm just bringing this up because it's going to be immediately addressed by Lacek. But there was no piracy because the nations that really committed to it, right? We're already saying, I believe it was in 1815 or 1805 when they did that. We no longer do piracy in the classic sense. And because every other nation that didn't agree with this couldn't. If your navy, whether you're at war or not, is out there trying to keep, you know, order, always ready, always able to fight, always able to intervene, then you're not going to have large-scale piracy. So piracy didn't exist, that is correct. But that is because navies did their job, right? And here comes the thing where I'm like, I just wanted to bring that up so that you understand. I had a concern here, and then comes the second part. But we're currently looking into peacetime benefits for patrolling and escorting convoys. Whatever that is, listen, I don't care. I had many thoughts on the naval system, and I stand by the idea that they come to the right result, even though sometimes it's a different way from the one that I would have liked to see, but it's always the right result. And this is one of the big things. It is beneficial to station your navy somewhere even before war breaks out. It doesn't cost you anymore, and you then have them already ready where you need them to be. That is great. That is really, really good. But if they add something that is a benefit to you having them out already, I would be ecstatic. That puts us into a position where the stations, so for example, you know, certain squadrons having certain areas that they are dedicated to, even if they rotate out, even if they have their bases somewhere else, that sort of stuff, where it actually has a meaning, right? I would really, really like this. It could be related to colonization. It could be related to a trade effect, for example, to how many convoys you need, that sort of stuff. I would really, really like it if they made it so that the Navy had a peacetime purpose as well, and they're clearly looking into it. Honestly, I love what the team is doing when it comes to looking at feedback, looking at considerations. That is so, so grand that this is actually an option. This is a huge one for me. I know it's underappreciated, but this is a huge one for me. Let's move on. None of these? There we go. They can have... So, does that mean that countries with national militia can only defend their fronts? They can have a small standing army as well, which gives you a few more options, but the main use of a national militia model is for turtling and homeland defense. Yes, makes sense. It's basically the US. As the US, I thought about this as well. I mean, maybe for World War I, right? But outside of that, you don't ever need to go for, like, conscription or, you know, like mass conscription, that sort of stuff, because... Hey, just go for regular army, like you have hit squadrons basically that go out and say, I'm specialized to deal with exactly this enemy and I can get it done. And then the rest can just sit at home and be like, hey, I'm the national militia and I got a, you know, home territory. That is what you need to have control over. And the rest can just, yeah, organize the squadrons basically. I think that is I like national militia as basically a concept, right? You said conscripts do not give power protection prestige, but does potential conscript battalions matter for AI calculating strength for diplomatic play reasons? Yes, you can always see how large a country's standing army is and how many conscripts they could potentially activate, and this is used by the AI to determine how to act in a diplomatic play. So this is already satisfying, but I also really wish that it took into account how long and how reasonably you could support certain conscripts. The player needs to sort of think themselves into this to look at the market. But, you know, hey, if I'm Russia, just because I can have many conscripts doesn't mean I have the option to actually raise them, because my infrastructure isn't good enough, my actual weaponry is not good enough, etc. You know, my industry isn't good enough. And if I know, as Japan, for example, that Russia is in that situation, I might still declare war against them, Because what are they gonna do? They can't bring all of these conscripts to Vladivostok, right? But just to bring that up, hey, they didn't exclude this option from being a thing. Just wanted to bring that up, right? I do honestly think they probably consider this already. Does the artillery support and mobility production methods mean those are separate battalions? It's the latter. So basically, no production methods that strengthen your infantry battalions. Having pure infantry armies is no longer the case, and that is good. Period. Basically. This is a long one, and this is a good one. Can you explain how much control you have over the proportion of different unit categories? Like, is it only one type of unit per building, or each building supplies a mix of infantry, artillery, cavalry, etc.? The production methods represent what components go into the battalions, so there are no artillery battalions, nor any kind of proportion of artillery to infantry. If you want your battalions to focus more on artillery, you'd invest in the latest and greatest tax on production methods, and perhaps save some money on your infantry or specialist corps. Yeah, there you go. Can you give a bit more details on impact of military goods shortages on your armed forces? Do they have any effects in peacetime, or should you only care about it in wartime? In wartime, shortages of course affect their offense and defense, but in peacetime it also affects their power projection, lowering your effective prestige as your army may be large but also undersupplied. The wartime shortages is also a gradual thing. We already see this with the building reserves, right? The way this works, and you're going to feel the shortage, or well, the shortage is an actual state, but you lacking the full production capacity that you could and should have, you will feel that gradually, so completely realistically, and then the shortage, of course, is like a permanent state where you basically are running on well, nothing. Yeah, you're doing your best. The effect on offense and defense, I think, is reasonable as well. In peacetime, it also affects their power projection, lowering your effective prestige. That's a big one. That is a really, really good one, because you can be looking at a situation where, you know, hey, yeah, you have a big army, but you can't supply them. Again, what I brought up earlier as well, right? I hope that you being unable to supply them goes into the AI calculation. Not a question, but a suggestion. Please consider linking your conscription capacity to the size of the standing army in some way. This is really cool. Standing armies were very important to train the reserves to be conscripted in times of war. Completely sensible. I didn't think of this as at all either. Mikhail, 3-1. Coming in here with such a good suggestion. Really like it. Lacek says, thanks for the suggestion. Yeah, there you go. Do you plan to distinguish between volunteer and drafted military force, both for regular and conscripts? All military forces are considered to be drafted. We don't have a volunteer model planned at the moment, maybe in the future. Paying low wages to your military has both explicit political effects and the implicit negative effects of making your servicemen and officers poor and potentially radical. So there will always be people serving in these barracks, but if you underpay them, they're gonna be angry. They might pull, you know, a November revolution on you. You know how it goes. That's the way the cookie sometimes crumbles. At the moment, we prioritize drafting pops, so this is on the topic of what the calculation is behind who goes into a conscription center. Drafting pops that A, qualify, and B, make just below average amount of money. And then we keep going further and further down the wage ladder until none more qualify. Then we start from the middle and go up. So, the middle, you go down. The middle, you go up. That's how it is done. If you at any point already finish recruiting, then you never go up, etc, etc. This probably sounds incredibly convoluted, but basically amounts to favoring the average Joe who wants the job before scraping the barrel, and then moving on to people who'd rather not take the job in order of least to most resistance. So, the base calculation of this sounds really, really reasonable to me. However, I do want to bring up that if you added prioritization of industry here, the system would be ideal. Because then it can continue going down and then going up, but you could spare the people that are maybe in a bad industry but are necessary, right? You could spare those and something else could be going on. I like the idea of both of those systems mixed. I think we would have something great. Let's move on to page number 2. It needs to load in, I think. There it is. One more question. Will conscripted battalions have conscripted officers as well? If yes, which pops will they be drafted from? Yes, officers come from whoever has qualifications to become one, which are often servicemen. So you might see servicemen from your barracks get recruited as officers in conscription centers, which actually, if you picture this, right, is basically your armed forces that existed beforehand teaching the new conscripted forces how things go, right? They become officers. Good idea in my opinion. Meaning having a standing army makes it easier to raise lots of conscripts in a pinch, but can also come from other professions, especially aristocrats. You know what, it actually makes me think. I assume officers earn more, and I assume the qualifications for officers are slightly higher than just a serviceman. If I am a serviceman and I go into a conscript center in which I become an officer and the war ends, meaning the conscription center shuts down, doesn't that mean that I now have a higher maybe literacy rate, a higher standard of living, a higher pay? Could it be that like that pop basically just went up in, you know, their class in the strata? It depends, of course, whether they can find a new job afterwards, but it would at least seem to me as though that pop during the war would be gaining like a higher standard of living, with that maybe a higher literacy rate, maybe a different interest group. Interesting, very interesting. I wonder what happens to them though if they, you know, they can't go back to the barracks because the barracks are filled by other people during the war, and then their jobs are taken. Honestly, the inner workings of this, I really, we need to play this game, man. They can also come from other professions, for example, aristocrats. Under a peasant levy model, it's almost always aristocrats that have the qualifications to become officers. Yep, that makes sense. That was also the basic notion of the peasant levy model itself, of course. Why start in the middle and go down? Why not start with the poorest pops and go up? We tried this first, but the often drastic increases in pop standard of living that came with it didn't feel realistic. Like, there are a bunch of clerks and shopkeepers here who'd love a 10% pay raise, but instead my recruiters go out and uplift the entire countryside's destitute peasant population first, making them insanely loyal to the state in the process. It didn't work like that. It's cool, but didn't seem very realistic and had me scratching my head for a while, wondering what was going on. Honestly, they need to make, like, just a live stream or just a cut together video where they talk about what system iterations they had, where they went, what the hell did we do? How did it happen that the aristocrats that lived in Anatolia all of a sudden live in Egypt and have become monks? You know, we need to see that stuff. The really confusing implementations of the reiterations here. I wonder if I have misunderstood how garrisons work. Under national militia, if your border regions are sparsely populated, would they only be defended by the conscripts in those states? Can't move garrisons from your more populated areas to the front? That is correct. Under a national militia model, the conscripted population defend their homes and do not engage in cross-continental marches. It is strategic regions level though, so this is larger than states. What you probably want to do in a huge country like the US or Russia would be activate conscripts along the border regions first and delay activating the ones further from the border until it becomes clear you need to. You can also maintain a small standing army whose generals you can order to any front you like. So basically, obviously, to actually be effective in warfare, you need an active moving army, be that conscripts or be that a standing army. However, the population in the national militia model that is at home defending their homes is still very, very useful because it is via strategic regions, and strategic regions are large. So them being distributed only in those still should be fine for the actual engaging in battles. Having a national militia all over the Midwest, for example, and then Canada attacks, that's a lot of people that are able to go to the Canadian front. I wonder whether the Canadians could even counter that. I presume we won't get a DD with a closer look on battles. Oh no, a dev diary dedicated to the battle mechanics will be coming in the future. It was mentioned in the front's dev diary that battles need more polish, particularly visual polish, before it's presentable, so it might be a while down the road. Very eager to see battles eventually. I'll be honest with you, there are a lot of questions that I have. I don't really want to speculate on it because we know nothing about battles currently, but I like the entire backdrop, the interwoven section of the economy and warfare, so I'm eager to see this eventually when it comes out. As I understand it, so there are questions here. As I understand it, each battalion is linked to a particular barrack and or conscription center. What happens if this barrack conscription center is overrun by enemy or destroyed by air naval bombardment, or this part of country rises up in revolt? Military buildings whose state is fully occupied by the enemy lose their ability to supply their battalions or flotillas, which means the General Admiral loses that amount of supply and have to redistribute between their available troops. So instead of the battalions that now lack a barrack and with that their supply center, instead of them having zero morale, the entire army gets less morale. This totally works. At the start of the game, the supply system employed by empires, but also by local and regional forces, were primarily based on their barracks, so their home supply centers, supplying only their regiments. Later on, it is debatable whether you shouldn't have, independent of the barracks, an overarching supply distribution network. I think it could be more pronounced. You could have later on actual supply centers that jump in if one unit, one army lacks supply, right? But the fact that they already redistribute between the army the available supply is kind of fine. Fine by me, basically, right? There is an argument here for an overarching supply network. But They're already redistributing it, and the barracks falling, what it really symbolizes isn't that that guy's barracks has fallen, especially late in the game. It means that a part of your supply, network has fallen, and that gives you trouble. So it basically does the job, although in a bit of a roundabout way, but it does the job. So I'm not gonna really complain about this too much. This basically means max morale will drop for the detachments those battalions are part of. Yep. We don't have any systems for sending advisors or volunteers. Okay. And you can only send a general as an expeditionary force if you side with the country in the diplomatic play that started the war. So the latter one I'm fine with. Volunteers, I don't care much. Advisors, hey, I didn't mean to do that. Advisors, I do care for. I do wish that we were looking at a situation where me sending an advisor lets, if that advisor, for example, is particularly well schooled in the usage of the line infantry or trench warfare, that it could be an asset for that other country and be an asset for me as we gather more experience. I have played a lot of Hearts of Iron 4 since No Step Back came out, single player and multiplayer. Honestly, I haven't played Hearts of Iron 4 in like 2 years, and I started Paradox games with Hearts of Iron 2. If you haven't played HoI 4 in a while, No Step Back makes it so good. Both the supply system and, more relevant to what we're talking about here, the Officer Corps. The Officer Corps is such a cool idea because it really ties how your military acts to people and to practical experience. And that is big. That is how it is. That is very realistic. That is very tied to that. And advisors really are a big role in this. I wish they had something in there, but I also think this is probably something like, hey, I don't know where we are. I don't think we're going to see the actual like Officer Corps style system in Victoria 3 on release. But I think like this together is basically like one content bubble, right? So I hope that we're going to get that eventually. Can someone explain to me how putting tariffs on, say, small arms and ammunition? Right, you're importing. No, we're not importing this. This is when you're exporting. You never tariff your own trade, foreign trade, whether imports from your market or exports to your market are subject to tariffs. In the context of the phrasing in the dev diary, if you have trading partners who get the military supplies from you, you might want to embargo or apply tariffs to such a trading during the war to keep national supply high and price low. Yep, makes sense. Perfectly reasonable. If you understand where trade is coming from in Victoria 3. Will war veterans be a thing? They were influential in politics in terms of being either anti-war, creating radical movements, winning elections due to popularity, or banding together to topple governments. They could be an influence group in terms of political representation. There is no interest group for war veterans, but of course, the Armed Forces interest group includes servicemen and officers, and even pops who used to be conscripted soldiers for a long time a while back who haven't been realigned yet. I like that. That phrasing, the way that works, sounds really good. Especially if I think, for example, after World War I, right, where you had this really like unity in most of the post-World War I countries anyway, of people that came back and said, hey, my life after the war this is crazy, this is insane, especially if they come back and don't find a job or are not capable to find a job, their standard of living goes down, and they are still committed to the armed forces. All of a sudden, not just during the war, but also afterwards, the armed forces stand there and say, oh, looks like everybody loves me, eh? This is why, in addition, generals and admirals can in some cases become interest group leaders. I want to see the system behind that. There are many questions here. Okay, strategic region makes more sense. So for a medium-sized country, this is more on the topic on national militia, right? Let's take Sweden and the Baltic strategic region. If they use national militia, they could defend a naval invasion in their subject Norway. They would not know, because the front would be owned by Norway, and only generals and their troops can be sent to foreign fronts. So until the war came to Sweden, the garrison Swedish conscripts wouldn't lift a finger. That's not their job. Hey, that's not their job. That is the job of the regular troops that Sweden surely would have. The national militia exists so that if you come into my home country, I have troops there that are able to, know the circumstances, know the territory, and fight you back. This is it, by the way, for the topic of these dev responses. Let me know what you think. I gotta be honest with you. The cost of war was, in my opinion, the best dev diary that they have done. Not because it was surprising. I don't think it was very surprising. We knew that the cost of the economic side, of the population side, and so on, would be dramatic, would be impactful. But, especially with the dev responses in mind here, it is such an intricate and robust looking, that is very important. It shouldn't be a delicate system that breaks if I cheese it in a little bit, right? It's such a robust looking system that I cannot wait to win a war, then afterwards still have too many people that were wounded in the war, now dependents are losing, their standard of living, are still in the armed forces, and all of a sudden, I have a military coup in my hands. I can't wait at that stuff. Seriously, this is just going to be really, really unique of an experience. I'm looking forward to it. Let me know what you think about the stuff that we talked about, both this and, of course, what we did at the start of the video, which were the Steam screenshots. For now, love ya, and see you later, alligator.